Get out. This hotel's for high society, not your kind. Those were the first words Vanessa Carter heard when she tried to check in to the Lux Pinnacle Hotel in Seattle. Words that stunned the entire lobby. Words that echoed louder than any piano playing in the background. But in just 9 minutes, the woman they tried to humiliate would fire the man who said them. Right there, in public, while social media exploded with videos capturing every moment. Before we jump into how it all unfolded, take a second. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. And if you believe respect should never depend on appearance, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel because this is a story about justice, dignity, and a woman who turned insult into action. Now let's go back to that night. June 23rd, 2024, 9:37 p.m., Seattle. Vanessa Carter walked through the glass doors of the Lux Pinnacle Hotel with purpose. At 42, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Born and raised in Seattle, she had built her career from scratch, rising through the ranks to become CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Group, a company that just so happened to own this very hotel, dressed in a navy blue tailored blazer and dark slacks. She wasn't flashy, but she was polished, poised, and more than qualified to book the presidential suite. She approached the front desk, handed over her ID and reservation confirmation, and smiled politely. Behind the desk stood Derek Lawson, the hotel manager, mid-30s, crisply dressed, but with eyes that judged too quickly. He glanced at her, barely looked at the ID, and frowned. "We're full," he said flatly, without even checking the system. Standing next to him was Amanda Pierce, the concierge. She snatched Vanessa's ID, gave it a quick look, then tossed it into a drawer like it was junk mail. "You look like you belong in a roadside dive," Amanda said with a chuckle, looking Vanessa up and down. And just like that, the air in the lobby changed. From the side, Ethan Cole, a tall and stocky security guard, stepped forward. "Move along, lady," he muttered, arms folded, as if she were a trespasser, not a guest. The disrespect was immediate and intentional, but Vanessa didn't flinch. She stood her ground. Just then, a young bellhop named Sophie Grant, not more than 23, glanced over from the elevator area, her brow furrowed. "Wait, she's got a confirmed booking," Sophie said cautiously. From the guest waiting area, a woman named Lauren Hayes, visiting from Minnesota, looked up from her phone. "Is there a problem with her reservation?" she asked aloud. Another guest, James Nolan, standing by with his suitcase, added, "Yeah, this feels off. She showed her ID." But Derek didn't back down. He stepped in front of Vanessa and sneered. "This hotel is for professionals, for our kind of clientele," he said, emphasizing our like it was a private club. At that moment, Olivia Tate, Vanessa's assistant, walked in. She had just parked their car and noticed the tension from across the lobby. She hurried to Vanessa's side. "What's going on here?" she asked, when Amanda blocked her from approaching the desk. Olivia didn't hesitate. "You're seriously judging her by how she looks?" she said, pulling out her phone. "This is discrimination, and it's about to go viral." Derek scoffed. "She doesn't look like a guest for the presidential suite. Maybe a roadside motel," he said, almost laughing. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. "You have no idea who I am," she said calmly. But there was steel in her voice. Derek replied, "I don't need to. People like you always show up thinking you're entitled to something. Not tonight." Vanessa took a small step forward. "You're making a serious mistake," she said. Ethan moved closer, towering. "Don't push it," he growled. Olivia held her phone higher. "Keep going. Every second is on video." Sophie, standing frozen, whispered, "This isn't right," then reached for her phone and opened TikTok. From the back office, Guests could hear Amanda and Derek laughing. "She's no VIP," Amanda said. Unaware that Sophie had already hit record, Derek returned to the desk and smirked. "We've had a technical issue. Your booking's been deleted." "Deleted?" Vanessa repeated. "You're really doing this?" The guests around her murmured. Lauren stood up from the lounge chairs. "She's being singled out," she said. James crossed his arms and added, "She paid. She has a reservation. Let her check in." Derek turned and snapped. "This is none of your business." Lauren didn't flinch. "It is when it's this obvious." Then Amanda stepped in again. "You need to leave," she said. "Now." Vanessa didn't move. "You're trying to erase my presence, but I'm not going anywhere." Olivia leaned in and whispered, "We can post this right now. Let the world see what they're doing." Derek pretended to yawn. "Put it online. No one cares." But he was dead wrong, because within minutes, Sophie's video was up on TikTok with the caption, "Black woman denied suite at her own hotel." In less than an hour, it crossed 1,000 views. Comments flooded in. "This is outrageous. Pure racism. Shut this place down." And Vanessa? She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She stood taller. "You're ruining my hotel," she said, her voice low but crystal clear. Derek laughed again, not realizing how close he was to losing everything. The guests around Vanessa were no longer bystanders. They were witnesses. Witnesses to a mistake Derek Lawson would remember for the rest of his life. Because in just a few more minutes, Vanessa Carter would show the entire hotel exactly who she was. And justice? It wouldn't just be served, it would be broadcast. Vanessa Carter stood there in the center of the Lux Pinnacle Hotel lobby, her ID still tucked away somewhere in a drawer, her dignity under siege, and yet her posture never wavered. Derek Lawson, standing tall behind the front desk, suddenly raised his voice, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "This guest is disrupting our ambiance." He gestured at Vanessa like she was some sort of public nuisance, not a paying guest. That's when Ethan Cole, the hotel's security guard, stepped directly between her and the desk, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes cold. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," he muttered, as if she were the one causing the problem. Amanda Pierce leaned in, arms folded, and added with a sneer, "Trust me, ma'am, you'd be much more comfortable somewhere else, like a motel." Her voice had that passive-aggressive sweetness that made the insult even worse. All eyes were on Vanessa now, not because of anything she did, but because 3 staff members had chosen to make a scene out of her existence. "Her booking is valid," Sophie Grant called out again, louder this time, from behind the bell desk. "She has every right to be here." But Derek ignored her, still addressing the guests now gathering nearby. "We have standards," he said, turning the moment into a public spectacle. "Some folks think they can dress the part, but we know better, don't we?" He looked around for approval, but instead got stunned silence. "This is outrageous," Lauren Hayes, the guest from earlier, spoke up again, now standing near Vanessa. "She didn't do anything wrong," James Nolan added. "This isn't just a mistake. This is something else, and we all see it." Olivia Tate, Vanessa's assistant, was already recording everything. "Keep it up," she said clearly. "The internet's about to get a front-row seat to this disaster." The room began to buzz with voices, uncomfortable murmurs, and sidelong glances. But Derek continued his act, pretending he was doing his job, when in truth, he was showing everyone who he really was, what no one knew yet, at least not the crowd of guests. Was that Vanessa Carter wasn't just any woman with a booking? At 32, she'd been denied a hotel suite just like this, in a different city, for the same reason, her race. It was that moment that lit the fire in her, pushing her to fight her way through the hospitality industry. to prove that luxury wasn't reserved for one kind of face, one kind of name, one kind of background. That fire had carried her all the way to the top of the company that now owned this hotel. And still, 10 years later, here she stood, facing the same ignorance, the same condescension, in a building that she partially owned, back at the front desk. Derek leaned toward Amanda and whispered something, but Sophie, still standing nearby, overheard him. "Keep the lobby exclusive," he said. "We don't need her kind hanging around." Sophie's face changed. She looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, and knew something wasn't right. "I'm calling Michael Reed," she said suddenly, pulling out her phone. Michael Reed, the regional branch director, wasn't someone you called lightly, but Sophie had had enough. Vanessa, standing firm beside Olivia, didn't flinch. "I'm not leaving," she said, clear as day. Olivia nodded, holding up her phone. "Twitter's about to explode." Lauren stepped forward, placing herself between Vanessa and Ethan, who still hovered too close. "This isn't new," Lauren said, looking around the lobby. "People act like this doesn't happen anymore, but it does, and now we're all witnesses." James nodded, backing her up. "This hotel is supposed to be better than this. Pinnacle's better than this." Guests around them began murmuring in agreement. Vanessa turned toward Derek, her voice rising just enough to carry across the room. "You're done, Derek." She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her tone held weight. Olivia followed up with a grin. "Smile for TikTok," Sophie chimed in. "I'm with Vanessa. This isn't okay." Amanda rolled her eyes, muttering, "A motel's still an option." "Sweetheart." Ethan glanced between them, visibly uneasy now, but still unwilling to act with integrity. "Don't make this worse," he grumbled. Lauren raised her voice. "Apologize, now," James added. "You're making a fool of yourself in your hotel." That's when Derek finally cracked. "You're a stain on our prestige," he said to Vanessa, his voice filled with venom. Olivia's jaw dropped. "Did you really just say that?" she asked, her phone capturing every second. And then, something shifted. Vanessa's shoulders relaxed, but her eyes sharpened. "Your corruption's out in the open now," she said, just then. Olivia caught another murmur, Derek telling Amanda and Ethan to make sure no more of them show up. No more of who? The message was clear. This wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern, a deliberate, ugly one, and they weren't hiding it anymore. At this point, the lobby was a mix of disbelief, frustration, and quiet rage. Guests stood still, some filming, others simply bearing witness. "What would you do in her shoes?" Sophie asked the camera softly. "What would you say to stop this?" Her voice was calm, but it cracked slightly at the end. She was young, but her courage was real. Back online, things were heating up. Olivia's post, titled "CEO Shamed at Her Own Hotel," was already gaining steam. 50,000 views in under an hour. Comments flooded in. "This can't be real. Fire the staff. 2024 and we're still dealing with this garbage?" It was no longer just a moment. It was becoming a movement. But Derek still didn't get it. Maybe he thought his job made him untouchable. Maybe he thought the woman standing before him was just another problem to be escorted out. But she wasn't. She was Vanessa Carter. And the world was watching. Vanessa Carter stood motionless in the center of the Lux Pinnacle Hotel lobby, her dignity tested, her patience worn thin, but her composure unshaken. The tension in the air had become so thick it was almost visible, like a fog pressing in on every guest who hadn't yet pulled out their phones to record. Then it happened. A burst of static came through the staff radio clipped to Derek Lawson's hip, followed by his own voice, loud and clear. "I'm curating the guest list," he said, His voice echoed off the lobby walls. He didn't realize his mic was still live. Amanda Pierce, standing at the desk, paled. Ethan Cole froze in place. Everyone heard it. Everyone. Curating the guest list, he had said. Like he was running some exclusive country club. Not a hotel owned by a hospitality group whose mission statement literally read, "Luxury for all." Olivia Tate's eyes widened as she locked eyes with Sophie Grant, who was already filming. Her camera now pointed squarely at Derek. "You heard that?" Olivia whispered. "Loud and clear," Sophie muttered. Then Amanda, trying to recover her footing, reached for a glass of water meant for guests, and accidentally spilled it all over Vanessa's blazer. "Oh, oops," she said, but her tone wasn't sorry. Her face wasn't surprised. It was smug, calculated. Vanessa stood still, the water soaking into her sleeve and shoulder. Slowly, she reached into her purse, pulled out a napkin, and patted her arm without saying a word. The room went silent, and then Ethan took one final step forward. "You need to leave, now, before I make you." His voice was sharp, almost threatening. That's when Lauren Hayes, the guest who had been watching since the start, shouted from across the lobby. "This is racism! You don't treat anyone else like this!" James Nolan jumped in. "This is harassment! You can't intimidate her into leaving!" Olivia took one step forward and said clearly, "Keep filming. Sophie, don't stop." Sophie's hands trembled slightly, but she kept the phone steady, now capturing every angle, every face, every lie. Vanessa turned to Ethan, stared him down, and said simply, "Try it." There was no fear in her voice. None. And somehow, that calm shook Ethan more than any threat could have. "Michael Reed is on his way," Sophie said loudly now, almost like a warning. The staff stiffened at the name. Michael Reed, the regional branch director, wasn't someone you crossed, if he was coming. This wasn't just a guest issue. This was turning into a corporate crisis. Still, Derek tried to keep control. "You're disrupting the peace," he said. "That's grounds for removal." Vanessa shook her head. "You made a scene. I walked in here to check in. You humiliated me. You deleted my reservation. You lied in front of witnesses. And now you're exposed." Olivia, phone still rolling, added, "And this video's blowing up." Guests turned to each other, whispering. A man in a business suit whispered, "Is she suing?" A woman in workout clothes replied, "She should. That guy's done." Lauren stepped beside Vanessa. "This staff is corrupt. All of it." James nodded. "And this hotel deserves better. Period." Vanessa looked straight at Derek and said the words with finality. "You're finished." "Derek," Olivia echoed. "It's all on camera. Every word." Sophie, still behind the counter, added, "She's legitimate. She had a reservation. She deserves to be here more than any of you." Derek lost it. "Get this riffraff out," he shouted, pointing toward Vanessa, Olivia, and even the guests standing beside her. "This is still my lobby." Amanda, caught in the storm, muttered, "She's not worth this suite. I don't get what the big deal is." Ethan, backing up now, said, "Move it. You heard him." But the crowd had shifted. Lauren stepped in front of Vanessa protectively. James stood beside her. "You're not touching her," Lauren snapped. "You've said enough. You've done enough." Olivia raised her phone higher and said, "Let's keep going. People need to see this." Then, like a line of dominoes falling, the moment everyone was waiting for finally arrived. The elevator chimed, and out stepped Michael Reed, a man in his 50s, with silver at his temples, crisp navy suit, and the kind of quiet authority that shut people up without a single word. He scanned the lobby and took it all in. Derek's red face, Amanda's stiff posture, Ethan hovering awkwardly, and Vanessa, still wet, still holding her napkin, but standing taller than all of them. "What's going on here?" he asked firmly. Derek straightened. "Just a misunderstanding with a walk-in. She doesn't have a proper reservation." Michael turned slowly. "That's so?" Olivia stepped forward. "We have video. She had a confirmed booking. They deleted it," Sophie added. "And there's more. He said he was curating the guest list over the radio. I recorded it." Lauren jumped in. "He's been discriminating against her since she walked through the door." Michael turned to Vanessa. "Ma'am, may I ask your name?" Vanessa didn't blink. "Vanessa Carter." Michael's face changed instantly. His shoulders squared. His jaw tensed. He began, but Vanessa finished it for him. "Yes, I'm the CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Group, and I own 25% of this hotel." A gasp moved through the room like a wave. Amanda's mouth dropped open. Ethan looked like he might be sick. Derek stood frozen, color draining from his face. Sophie whispered, "She owns this place?" Olivia smiled. "Now you understand." Vanessa turned slowly to face Derek one last time. "You said I didn't belong here, that I should leave, that this place is too good for me." She paused. "You didn't know who I was, but it never should have mattered." Michael Reed took a deep breath, turned to Derek, and said, "You're done here." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a decision, and it was only just beginning. Derek Lawson wasn't done. Not yet. Even with the room turning on him, even with Sophie's recordings blowing up online, and Michael Reed's name echoing like a warning, he still thought he could regain control. His voice, now sharper, desperate, barked across the lobby. "Amanda, Ethan, remove her from the property. Now!" The room froze again. Amanda hesitated. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, as if waking up to the consequences. But Vanessa Carter didn't flinch. She stood tall, shoulders back, eyes fixed on Derek with the calmness of someone who had weathered far worse than a tantrum. Olivia Tate, her phone still filming, stepped in between Vanessa and Ethan, who was inching forward. "You're about to make this a lawsuit," Olivia warned. "Back up." Derek moved fast, too fast, and reached toward Olivia's phone, trying to snatch it from her hand, but before he could make contact, James Nolan, one of the guests who had been watching the entire nightmare unfold, stepped in and blocked him. "Don't touch her," James said firmly, his voice low and steady, like a man drawing a line in the sand. "This isn't your lobby anymore," Sophie kept recording, her voice tight with nerves but full of purpose. "You need to stop. This is harassment." Lauren Hayes joined Olivia and James in forming a human wall between Vanessa and the staff. "She's staying right here," Lauren said. "You've humiliated her enough." Ethan looked around at the faces, every guest now openly staring at him, not with fear, but with disgust. "This is bad," he mumbled under his breath. "This is real bad." Derek tried to hold his ground. "It's hotel policy," he muttered, his voice losing its earlier confidence. "Policy doesn't excuse bias," Vanessa said, her voice like steady thunder. "It doesn't excuse deleting someone's booking. It doesn't excuse verbal abuse, public humiliation, or lying to a guest's face." Olivia nodded. "And TikTok's already going crazy. This is live now. Everyone's watching." Amanda, still standing stiff behind the desk, whispered, "I was told to do it. I didn't know." But Sophie turned the camera toward her. "You knew," she said quietly. "You just didn't care until now." The guests around them began nodding. "We're with her," said one. "She deserves justice," said another. James added, "This has gone too far. Shut it down." Vanessa looked toward the elevator. "Is Michael Reed here yet?" she asked, her tone steady but firm. Olivia glanced at her phone. "He's on his way down. Any second now." Derek's face tightened. He knew what that meant, and for the first time, he looked unsure. The door to the executive elevator chimed. Out stepped Michael Reed, flanked by 2 senior staff members. He surveyed the room like a general walking into chaos, guests out of their seats, staff stiff and pale, and Vanessa Carter standing calm and certain, like a lighthouse in the storm. Michael didn't ask questions. He simply looked at Derek and said, "Is it true?" Derek opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Olivia stepped forward. "We have video, booking confirmation, audio from the radio, witnesses," Sophie added. "Guests were denied service because of how she looked." Lauren nodded. "They tried to throw her out for wearing a blazer and having the wrong skin color." Michael took a breath and then said the words that changed everything. "Vanessa Carter is the CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality. She owns 25% of this hotel. She has every right to be here, more than any of us." The room gasped. Guests exchanged shocked glances. Amanda's hands trembled. Ethan looked like someone had pulled the ground from under him. Derek shook his head slowly, as if trying to rewind time. "This is a lie," he muttered. "This can't be real." But Vanessa stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "It's real," she said. "I helped build this company, and you just embarrassed it in front of the world." Michael nodded at security. "Escort him to the back office, immediately." But Vanessa raised a hand. "No, right here. Let them see." She looked around at the lobby full of guests and staff and said, "You humiliated me in public. You can hear the truth in public, too." Michael gave her a respectful nod. "You have the floor, Ms. Carter." Vanessa turned to Amanda and Ethan. "I'm offering you both one chance. Retraining, accountability, growth. That's more grace than you gave me." Amanda's lips parted. I didn't mean to." But Vanessa cut her off. "You did, but I'm giving you a path forward." She turned to Sophie. "You spoke up. You filmed. You protected a stranger. That matters to me." Vanessa then looked to Michael and said, "I'd like to see Sophie promoted, effective immediately." Michael smiled. "Done." Guests clapped. A few even cheered. Olivia held up her phone. "This is going viral gold," she whispered with a grin. "You just changed the game." Derek, still standing frozen, finally snapped. "You've ruined everything." But Vanessa simply replied, "No, I'm fixing it." Outside, Sophie's video of the confrontation had just hit 1 million views. Comments poured in. "Iconic. She's a legend. Take them all down." But in the lobby, it wasn't about fame. It was about something deeper. Being seen, being respected, being heard. And in that moment, every single person watching knew one thing for certain. Vanessa Carter wasn't just reclaiming her place. She was redefining it. For a few moments. After the reveal, the lobby of the Lux Pinnacle Hotel fell into stunned silence. The kind of silence that hangs heavy, not with peace, but with reckoning. Vanessa Carter, standing in the center of it all, had just been announced as the CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Group by Michael Reed himself. And suddenly, all the judgment, the arrogance, the smug little smirks from earlier, they vanished, in their place. Panic bloomed on the faces of those who had dismissed her, especially Derek Lawson, who looked like the ground had just cracked under his feet. He took a step back, eyes darting, trying to make sense of what had just happened. This has to be a mistake," he said weakly. You're the CEO?" Vanessa's voice was low but firm. "Yes, and you've not only insulted a guest tonight, you insulted your employer, your team, and the values this company stands for." Then she turned to Michael Reed and said, without hesitation, "I'm terminating Derek Lawson, effective immediately." Michael nodded. "Understood. Derek, you are relieved of duty. Right now. Derek's mouth opened, as if to protest, but no sound came out. He looked around for support, found none. Even Amanda Pierce and Ethan Cole had taken a step away from him, as if the distance could save them. "This is ridiculous," Derek finally muttered. "I've been here 5 years." Vanessa looked him in the eye and said, "And in 5 minutes, you destroyed your own career." Olivia, still filming, panned the camera slowly across the lobby, capturing the reactions, guests nodding, some clapping, a few visibly emotional. "This is justice," Lauren Hayes whispered. "She's doing what needs to be done." James Nolan added. Amanda Pierce stood behind the desk, hands clasped nervously in front of her. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know who she was. Derek told us to treat people like that. I didn't know she was." But Vanessa cut her off, gently but firmly. "It never should have mattered who I was. You judged me by my appearance. You mocked me. You blocked me from the desk. You deleted my booking, or stood by while it happened. But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to rebuild. I'm offering you a chance, retraining. You'll go through it, and then you'll have to prove yourself. Not to me, to the people you serve." Amanda's eyes welled up. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan, standing to the side, looked down at his shoes. "I just followed orders," he said, not proud of it. "But I was wrong. I see that now." Vanessa nodded. "That's not enough. But it's a start." Then she turned to Sophie Grant, still holding her phone, still documenting everything. "You stood up when it counted. You didn't stay quiet. You didn't protect yourself. You protected what was right." Sophie's eyes widened. "I just did what I thought was decent," she said. But Vanessa shook her head. "You did what most people wouldn't, and that's what leadership is." She turned to Michael Reed and said, "Effective immediately. Promote her to full concierge." Michael didn't hesitate. "Consider it done." Applause broke out again, this time louder, more certain. Even hotel guests who hadn't spoken before began clapping, showing their support. Lauren shouted, "That's what I'm talking about." And James echoed, "That's leadership. That's what a real CEO looks like." Derek, now completely pale, spat bitterly. "This hotel's going down because of you. You've ruined its image." Vanessa turned to him one last time. "No, Derek, you ruined its image when you treated a black woman like she didn't belong in a place she helped build." Then she looked to Ethan, who was blocking the hallway toward the office. "Step aside, please." But Ethan hesitated. "There's press waiting outside," he said. "This is already spreading." Olivia chimed in. "We know. We want them to see this. No spin, no edits, just the truth." Ethan stepped aside. Lauren and James instinctively moved forward, placing themselves between Vanessa and Derek in case he tried one last desperate move. But Derek had nothing left. All he could do was mutter, "This is all going to fall apart. You'll see." Sophie turned her phone on him one last time. "It's already falling," she said. "And you're the reason why." Just then, Amanda cleared her throat and, almost shaking, spoke again. "There's something else. Something you should know." Vanessa looked at her, calm but curious. Amanda's face flushed. "Derek told us to target certain guests. He said to make things harder for anyone who didn't fit the aesthetic," Ethan added. "He called it curating the brand experience." A murmur rolled through the guests nearby. Olivia's mouth tightened. "That sounds like coded language. For discrimination." Amanda nodded. "He said corporate approved it, that a regional manager trained us to act like that." Vanessa's face didn't change, but a quiet anger flickered in her eyes. "Then it's deeper than I thought," she said. "Michael, I want a full audit of hiring practices, guest treatment reports, and every training module issued in the last 5 years." Michael agreed immediately. We'll bring it to the board tomorrow morning." Vanessa looked at the stunned staff and the silent lobby, then turned to the guests and said, "We will not cover this up. We will not handle it quietly. This happened, and we're going to fix it in the open." A guest nearby, filming the moment, whispered to his phone, "This is history. She just changed everything." Back online, Sophie's latest upload had crossed 1 million views. The caption, "CEO fires manager on spot." The comments poured in faster than ever. "Iconic. This is how you lead. She's a legend." Guests began tagging news outlets, activist pages, and influencers, and Vanessa Carter, standing calm in the aftermath, didn't pose or smile for the cameras. She simply did what she came to do, restore integrity. Outside, the press had gathered. Inside, the entire atmosphere had shifted. People were no longer just watching a scandal. They were witnessing change, led by a woman who refused to be dismissed. With Derek Lawson finally escorted out of the Lux Pinnacle Hotel by upper management, the lobby began to breathe again. But the energy had shifted entirely. The fear, the tension, the stunned silence had been replaced by something stronger. Resolve. Vanessa Carter didn't just reclaim her dignity, she reclaimed the standard by which this hotel would now operate, and she wasn't about to leave that power at the door. "I want to begin reforms immediately," she said clearly, addressing both Michael Reed and the staff still gathered around the lobby. "This hotel, and every property under the Pinnacle name, will be held to new standards. That means diversity training, empathy-based guest service, anti-discrimination policies restructured from the ground up, and oversight, real oversight." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The tone in her delivery made it clear. She meant business. Olivia Tate stood at her side, still holding her phone, the recording light still glowing. "Let's make it public," she said. "No backroom deals, no PR spin. Let people see this as it happens." Vanessa nodded. "That's the plan." As replacement staff began to arrive, concierge Emily Stone and temporary floor manager Mark Davis, Vanessa shook their hands personally. "You're here to set a new tone," she told them. "It starts now." Then, turning back to Amanda Pierce and Ethan Cole, who stood at the edge of the reception area, she faced them fully. "I meant what I said. Retraining is on the table. But that doesn't mean forgiveness without accountability. You both have to earn trust again. Not just mine, but the trust of every person who walks through those doors." Amanda's voice cracked slightly. "I accept that. I know I didn't speak up when I should have. I just kept my head down." Vanessa replied gently but firmly. "That's not enough anymore. Staying silent is how people like Derek get away with things. Never again." Ethan looked up from the floor. "I've seen a lot in security," he said, "but I never thought I'd be part of the problem. You gave me a chance to face it. Thank you." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Use it wisely." Sophie Grant, now in her new role as concierge, stepped forward with a soft smile. "Thank you, Ms. Carter. I never imagined speaking up would lead to this. I just couldn't stay quiet." Vanessa smiled warmly for the first time all night. "You're the kind of leader we want. Someone who speaks when it's uncomfortable, who protects others before herself." Lauren Hayes, still nearby with James Nolan, gave Sophie a proud nod. "You saved this place," Lauren said, "and you reminded all of us that silence helps no one." Guests began clapping, not for a grand show, not for a publicity stunt, but for what felt like a turning point, an honest change in the making. Michael Reed, standing quietly to the side, then cleared his throat and said, "We'll coordinate mandatory retraining for all staff. Effective this week, I'll oversee it personally. We're also initiating monthly culture audits. If anything like this ever happens again, It won't be because leadership looked the other way. But just as things seemed to calm, Sophie stepped forward again. Her face was uncertain, her voice quieter. "There's something else," she said, eyes flicking to Vanessa, then to Michael. "When I first got hired here, we were told to prioritize guests that fit the brand. The actual phrase they used was elite-compatible profiles. It wasn't just Derek saying it. It was in the onboarding meeting, regional training." A hush fell over the crowd. Vanessa's expression hardened, not with surprise, but confirmation. "And who gave that training?" she asked. Sophie hesitated. "A manager named Ron Ellison. He said he was following corporate's messaging." Michael looked stunned. "Ron hasn't worked here in over a year, but he led training for several locations." Olivia shook her head. "This goes deeper than Derek. If regional leadership allowed discrimination to be coded into staff guidance, then this is bigger than a single hotel." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Then we're launching a formal investigation, not just of this location, but of every training and messaging strategy issued under the Pinnacle brand in the last 5 years. Michael pulled out his phone. "I'll begin assembling the documentation. We'll present findings to the board immediately." Vanessa looked across the lobby again, not just at her team, but at the guests, the phones still recording, the young concierge adjusting her name badge, the humbled employees looking for redemption, and she said clearly, "This brand is changing, not through PR, through accountability." Outside, media vans were pulling up. Inside, staff began organizing guest accommodations. Some who had witnessed the incident asked to stay, saying they believed in the reform. Others requested compensation, which Vanessa granted on the spot. "No one leaves here feeling dismissed," she said. "Not tonight." Derek's belongings were boxed and removed from the office. Amanda and Ethan were told they'd report to new training sessions beginning the next morning. Sophie was moved to a new desk, one with a clear view of the lobby, and Vanessa stood behind her for a moment, quietly watching. "You'll be training future hires," she said. "We need your voice in this." Sophie swallowed hard. "I'll do my best." "That's all I ask," Vanessa replied. As the clock neared midnight, Olivia pulled Vanessa aside and whispered, "Twitter just hit 2.5 million views on your name. Headlines are starting to roll in." Vanessa took a deep breath. "Let them roll," she said. "Let the world see how we turn things around." But just as she prepared to head to her suite, a final disruption emerged. Derek, who had been removed from the lobby earlier, returned through the side employee entrance and planted himself at the front desk, refusing to leave. "I built this place," he growled. "I trained every one of these kids. And you think you can erase me with a PR stunt?" Security moved in quickly, but Vanessa waved them off. She walked slowly toward him and said, "You didn't build this place. You poisoned it. And now we're healing. You don't belong in that process." Derek looked her in the eye. "You've destroyed what made this hotel great." "No," she replied, calm as ever. "I've destroyed what made it unjust." Guests began to applaud again, and Ethan, now standing by security, nodded at Vanessa with quiet respect. "We've got it from here," he said. Derek was escorted out, this time for good, and as he disappeared out the door, Olivia sent one final tweet that night. "Hotel bias exposed by CEO, true leadership on display." The tweet exploded. Within minutes, news anchors were referencing it. The comments said it all. "Corporate scam exposed." "Vanessa's a hero. More CEOs like her, please." But inside the hotel, Vanessa didn't revel in the moment. She simply turned to her team and said, "Day one of change starts now," the morning after the confrontation. Vanessa Carter sat in the presidential suite, not as a guest, but as the rightful executive she was, reviewing documents, sipping her coffee in calm reflection. The same walls that had echoed with insults the night before were now silent witnesses to something far more powerful: justice in motion. Downstairs. The Lux Pinnacle Hotel operated under a new air of vigilance and clarity, as a team of internal auditors quietly began interviews, reviews, and cultural assessments. At 10 a.m. sharp, Vanessa entered the glass-walled conference room on the 19th floor for an emergency board meeting, joined by Regional Director Michael Reed, board members David Brooks and Sarah Collins, and several newly appointed diversity advisors. The energy in the room was different. There were no defensive tones, no attempts at spin. Vanessa laid everything out: the incident with Derek Lawson, the history of coded bias in regional training, and Sophie's recorded statement exposing corporate-level neglect. She presented guest testimonies, security footage, and the social media firestorm that had now drawn nationwide attention. No one interrupted when she finished. Sarah Collins leaned forward and said, "Vanessa, you've done more in 12 hours than most executives manage in a year. This isn't damage control. This is transformation," David Brooks added. "And we need to support it fully. The guests believe in this. The public believes in this. We're behind you." It was unanimous. The board approved a full-scale inclusion audit across all Pinnacle properties, established a new leadership council on equity and ethics, and formally backed Vanessa's initiatives, everything from retraining to transparent hiring, from performance review reforms to public-facing progress reports. Meanwhile, downstairs in the lobby, Sophie Grant now wore a new name tag. Lead concierge. She moved with a quiet confidence, helping guests with genuine warmth. Backed by the full support of the new staff, Amanda Pierce and Ethan Cole were undergoing mandatory retraining in the conference center, working under supervision, while HR conducted interviews about prior incidents that may have gone unreported. Lauren Hayes, one of the guests who had stood by Vanessa during the worst of it, checked out with a smile and said to Sophie, "I'll be back. For once, I feel like I can trust this place," James Nolan added. "This hotel's lucky to have someone like Vanessa in charge." Upstairs. Vanessa was wrapping up her meeting when Olivia entered the room and handed her the latest social stats. "Sophie's final video crossed 5 million views," Olivia said, almost in disbelief. "The comments. People are calling this the moment hospitality changed." Vanessa nodded but didn't gloat. "It's a start," she said. "Real change doesn't happen in one viral night. It happens in the follow-through." She closed her laptop, stood up, and shook hands with every board member personally. "Let's stay accountable," she told them, "not just to our shareholders, but to the people we serve." Later that afternoon, as Vanessa stepped out onto the front steps of the hotel, she was met not with protests, but with applause from a small group of community leaders and advocates who had come to show support. But not everyone was ready to move on. Derek Lawson, standing just beyond the hotel property line, held up a handwritten sign and shouted, "This was my hotel. You can't erase me." His voice cracked as he repeated himself, but the crowd didn't respond with sympathy. They looked past him, toward the woman who had stood her ground with dignity. Vanessa didn't respond with anger or insults. She simply looked him in the eye and said, "You were never building this hotel. You were gatekeeping it. And that ends now." Security gently escorted him away. This time not as a scandal, but as a footnote. That night. Vanessa walked the halls of the hotel, speaking with staff, thanking guests for their patience, ensuring every corner of the building reflected the new standard. Olivia caught up to her near the lobby. "You're making history. You know that?" she said. Vanessa smiled softly. "Maybe," she replied. "But it shouldn't take history to make people feel human." The hotel glowed that evening, not because of the chandeliers or polished floors, but because the energy had changed. People were being seen, heard, and valued. Sophie posted one final video from her new desk, captioned, "CEO transforms hotel after reforms." The views climbed rapidly. Comments flooded in. "Vanessa's changing everything. This is the kind of leadership we need everywhere." Pinnacle just became the gold standard. 3 months later, Vanessa Carter would speak at a national leadership summit about hospitality and equity. But that day in June would remain the moment it all changed. When a woman walked into her own hotel, was told she didn't belong, and showed the world exactly what belonging and leadership really looks like.